Welcome to Evolution Revolution. My name is Susan Allan, and I am thrilled to have you with us today. As you may already know, the purpose of our show is to introduce you to breakthroughs in the human potential movement. The reason for that is I know I'm committed and you're committed to living lives that are joyous. And that is our human birthright. Health, well-being, success, abundance, all of that is available. But as I found myself, and thousands of you have found, you have to have certain skills, you may have to have certain training, you may have to have certain understanding. And as you may already know as well, I'm the founder of the Marriage Forum Incorporated. It's a local nonprofit company. And though I teach many things and do mediations, the basis is a heart-centered communication system that I call the Heartspace system. It gives you an opportunity to calm yourself before speaking. Because the bottom line is nobody's going to listen to us, really listen, if we're not calm anyway. So it's just practical, it's just common sense, right? And I do offer a complimentary 1-hour telephone consultation, and about 9,000 or more of you have experienced that already. And the purpose, as I said, is today to learn about something new, something that's a breakthrough, something you may not be aware of. And today we're going to have a really fascinating show, at least I hope you'll agree with me that it is. In 1975, I experienced a near-death experience. I was in India, I was all alone, I had no idea what was happening. And as you'll hear in our show with our really remarkable guest, it was a very unique experience, a very unusual one. So let me first welcome our guest today, Barbara Bartolome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Barbara is the director of IANDS Santa Barbara. And I will tell you exactly what that means. So I had not even known that there was an organization in charge of this. And then I found, thanks to you, that we have a branch of it in Santa Barbara, which is really extraordinary. And Barbara is a near-death experiencer. She's the founder and the director of the Santa Barbara branch of IANDS, which is truly fabulous. For any of us who live either in Santa Barbara or nearby, you know, we bless you for this. It's made a huge difference. And what IANDS stands for is the International Association for Near Death Studies. Barbara also serves on the board of directors. It's a worldwide organization, and it encourages research, and it globally educates people about near-death experiences. And it provides support and community to experiencers all over the world. So the first thing we want to say is, what is officially, what's the official definition of a near-death experience?
A near-death experience is a profound psychological experience where the individual is either at death or approaching death, or they're having a traumatic psychological or physiological situation. So you can be actually scared out of your body and have an out-of-body experience, or you can actually be dead or near death and have a near-death experience.
Very interesting. And just, I don't want you guys to worry. When it happened to me, I don't want you to be thinking, well, whatever happened to Susan? And I can't really pay attention to the show until I have that question answered. So I had 103 fever, I had the flu, and I was very, very ill. And literally, I was catapulted out of my body. That's what happened. But, you know, nothing to worry about, because it ended very, very quickly. And obviously, happy ending. You know, here I am. But I was transformed. And that, to me, is really the purpose of this show. And the purpose of IANDS is to let people know that if they do have this experience, it's transformative in a very joyous way.
Absolutely.
You know?
There are a number of NDE characteristics that actually go with the near-death experience, and one of them is profound peace, well-being. The transformation is amazing with these individuals that have this happen.
Yes.
There are a number of other things they feel.
But not now, because we have to take everybody through this and one at a time. Thank you. So tell me about how many people in the United States have already had NDEs that we know about.
In 1992, there was a Gallup poll that actually showed that 13 million people in the U.S. answered that they had had a near-death experience, which was 5% of the population at that time. There was another study that was done in Germany in 2001 that showed 4% of the adults that were queried had had a near-death experience. And they currently believe that there are about 774 near-death experiences per day in the U.S. currently.
Wow, thank you. And you said something that I found interesting. You said that there's a link between improved medical care and near-death experiences. So please tell everyone about that.
Well, with AED devices and defibrillators and the increased medical care that's been provided over the years by medical physicians and surgeons, and the cardiac arrest rate of survival has actually increased, so that there are a number of people coming back from these cardiac arrests that have had near-death experiences. They actually believe that 10% of cardiac arrests in a hospital setting return with an experience of an NDE.
Wow, that's remarkable. That's remarkable. Now, I know that you told me that this has been going on historically, and there's a lot of representation throughout history about NDEs. Tell us about that, please.
Well, the representation is across the board in all of the cultures around the world, but it's all the way back to Plato's time, and specifically in art as well. So Hieronymus Bosch was a Dutch painter, and you're familiar with him, and he did an amazing picture clear back in the 1400s showing people rising up and going through a tunnel and a very bright light at the far end of the tunnel, and that was their goal, to get to the opposite end of the tunnel. And so there are a number of issues and people that have had this NDE experience that have written about it. There are also a number of Hollywood people who have had near-death experiences and talked about them. And so you have Elizabeth Taylor and Gary Busey, you have Chevy Chase and George Lucas, Lou Gossett Jr. There are a number of people that are famous.
Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour,
right,
that's right.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a number of people out there that are also famous that have had them.
Wonderful, wonderful. It really, it's an experience that completely changed my life, and Barbara said the same thing, and the people that I know who've had this experience, bottom line is it eliminates fear of death. It just shifts. Yes. Now, the idea of dying still is not a pretty picture. I don't think anybody is looking forward to that.
No.
But once it's, you've gone to the other side, now there's tremendous, tremendous comfort. And one of my favorite movies where Audrey Hepburn plays the angel on the other side.
Yes.
I can't even remember what that movie is. I've seen so many that have to do with near-death experience. But I can tell you that that's very real to me. It's not something I'm afraid of anymore. I'm much more calm as I think about it as I get older, and eventually everybody gets older. This is a very important experience if you're lucky enough to have it. Now, Raymond Moody was here very recently, and William Peters, who was a previous guest on the show, and I hope you watched that show, was one of the people who brought Dr. Moody to Santa Barbara. And he is called the father of near-death experiences. So why don't you tell everybody about Dr. Moody?
Well, Dr. Moody actually started out as a medical doctor, and then he obtained his PhD in philosophy, which was his heart source for him. And he ended up encountering patients that were reporting near-death experiences to him. So he became a researcher of near-death experiences. And in 1975, he published a book called Life After Life. That book has now sold 20 million copies and has been translated into all sorts of languages. He actually has such a following that there are so many people around the world that understand this now, that he's changing the course of the world with his knowledge about near-death experiences.
Wow, wow. And it just amazed me because he hasn't had an NDE. So what we're seeing now is we're at a point historically where people are really finding this to be in common parlance.
Yes.
This is not such an unknown commodity as it was in 1975 when I'd never heard of it and experienced it.
Exactly. And with the number of people reporting them, it's increasing because of media attention as well. So one of the very important stories that have just recently come out is about Jeff Olson. And Dr. Raymond Moody actually believes that Jeff Olson's story is the tipping point for near-death experiences, because in his near-death experience after a horrific car accident claimed his wife and his young baby, Jeff was being operated on, and the surgeon and the scrub nurse who had him under anesthesia on the table actually saw the ceiling above the operating table open up, as they said, to another realm. And they saw Jeff's wife, and she told them both that this would be a successful operation, that he would live. And so Raymond Moody said that in a situation where an NDE is having an experience, it's easily discredited by skeptics. But when you have a doctor and a scrub nurse who are also involved in the situation, it becomes something that cannot be overlooked.
Wow. That's such an extraordinary story. Wow.
Jeff Olson will be here in Santa Barbara September 3rd at our IANDS meeting, and so if you're interested, you can attend and hear his story firsthand.
I will absolutely be there, you know, and we're going to see if he could possibly be a guest on the show.
That'd be wonderful.
Love to have him. Now, tell everybody all about IANDS, because you have these, to me, astounding guests, given that this is, you know, a Santa Barbara branch of a, you know, a large organization, but you've been able to get the most amazing guests.
Yeah, we've had Anita Moorjani and Dr. Eben Alexander here twice, and Raymond Moody, of course, and we've had a number of other speakers that have brought this NDE message to our attendees. And our IANDS organization has been very influential in the IANDS organization worldwide as well. So it's a very supportive organization for experiencers, and it really draws people here to Santa Barbara.
And I have to say, you are just doing an amazing job. You personally.
Thank you.
You know, I applaud what you are doing, because it is really difficult to run an organization and be efficient and welcoming at the same time. And I have to say, on television, on live television, so you can't run away.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
It's just amazing.
It's my heart purpose. It's my purpose in my life, because when I was up on the ceiling in my NDE, I said to that being that I needed to complete my life purpose, and I really realized this is it.
Yes. Well, thank God.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Jeffrey Long, who is a medical doctor, has written a book called Evidence of the Afterlife, I believe.
Yes.
And he's identified 9 key points. Would you read those to us, please?
Yes, I'd love to. The 9 lines of evidence that Jeffrey Long feels prove a near-death experience in his book, Evidence of the Afterlife, include crystal clear consciousness, an out-of-body experience where their observations are confirmed by others, heightened senses where, such as a blind woman having never seen anything in her life, actually sees and hears during her experience, consciousness under anesthesia, which should be medically inexplicable, perfect playback years later of that near-death experience over and above any other memory that they have in their life that would be a major memory, of birth of a baby or a marriage. This NDE experience becomes the greatest thing that they can remember. They have family reunions during their experience, and they meet departed loved ones and family members. The children's experiences worldwide are the same as teen experiences or adult experiences, and these children are too young to have had input on near-death experiences or spiritual awareness or anything about death. They really haven't had anything, and so their experiences are very pure, and they are the same as adult experiences. There's a consistency worldwide with the experiences through religion or location. All the experiences come up with the same factors, and the after effects are the same with experiencers across the board. So those are the 9 lines of evidence that Jeffrey came up with.
Thank you. And I know we just went to see Heaven is for Real, which is playing in theaters right now, and you organized a fabulous movie night. It was so wonderful. And that's about a very small child having this experience. So why don't you talk about that in the context of IANDS?
Yeah, the Heaven is for Real book has been out on the New York Times bestseller list, and it actually is #1 at this time. And it has been on it for 180 weeks. So they've translated into a number of languages. It's about a little boy who was 4 years old when he had his near-death experience. And the movie portrays his father's situation with trying to convince that his son has had this experience because his wife, his church, he's a pastor of a church in his community, isn't willing to listen to this child and what he's representing in his near-death experience. It's interesting that on the New York Times bestseller list that the 2nd spot is currently held by Proof of Heaven, which is Dr. Eben Alexander's book. So holding #1 and #2 spots on the nonfiction list shows you that the world is very interested in death and near-death experiences, afterlife, and consciousness.
And you know, it just amazes me, having lived in India for so many years and being a meditator since the 70s. And I've seen, you know, so many miracles. I've seen Jesus twice. You know, I've seen Jesus in front of me twice, and, you know, countless miracles. It just always fascinates me that America takes so long, you know, to catch up, because in India, you know, they have the kinds of things that you see in Lourdes on a regular basis. They have photos that, you know, milk comes out of the photos, and, you know, and sacred ash suddenly appears, and, you know, honey pours out of statues, and, you know, all of this stuff. And in India, it's amazing. People are not shocked, they're not confused, they're not offended, they're not horrified. They take it for granted. You know, they take it for granted. So, you know, here we are.
We're pretty far behind the times, but I think we're catching up with the media coverage and with the near-death experience stories, as well as other consciousness stories coming out. I think that it's really, we're coming there. We're getting to that point.
But, you know, again, we want people to be really conscious of who they're telling experiences to, whatever the experience may be. You know, you really want to make sure that you're sharing something from your heart and from your soul with an audience that is either invisible like you are, so if somebody's making faces, we don't see them, or someone who's really open to what you're going to share. You know, so you want to be present with that, just to be more emotionally safe and more comfortable. And particularly if you're thinking of sharing things at work, you want to be conscious of the corporate culture as well. So tell us about your near-death experience.
Well, it was in 1987, and it was 3 months after the birth of my 2nd child. I was 31 years old, and I was scheduled for a myelogram, which is a procedure prior to back surgery that they were going to do the next day. It was here in Santa Barbara. And unfortunately, the myelogram went wrong, and I went into cardiac arrest and ended up feeling very panicked in my body just before exiting it and finding myself up on the ceiling. And up on the ceiling, the panic had disappeared. I felt absolutely peaceful and very wrapped in love. And I looked down at my body and I said, if I'm up here and, you know, my body's down there and that man is calling code blue, then I think that I must have died. So I immediately sensed a being next to me, and that being I felt was so connected to me that I'd known them forever. And I began talking to the being, telling them how much I wanted to go back to my life, to my children, that I hadn't completed my purpose. During this time of talking to the being, I was looking down and watching the unfolding events in my resuscitation. And so when they were successfully able to resuscitate me, I joyously told the room of observers, the medical staff, what they had said and done while I was dead. It was very interesting, and that was very shocking to them.
I mean, it's just amazing the courage that you had to explain this. And I know that IANDS is very, very focused on medical research. So in addition to your own experience in telling doctors, are they gathering stories from people around the world? How are they handling this?
Yes. IANDS still is focused on medical research, and they publish a journal, and so the researchers have a location that they can actually publish their work in. But they've also taken on the support system, being the support system for NDEers all across the world. And they also have a feeling that they need to globally educate the world on it, what a near-death experience is. So they definitely have it going in all directions, and they're doing a really good job of it.
Thank you. And I know that in my experience, my NDE was absolutely blissful. It is the most bliss I have ever experienced, and I'm always looking for bliss, in a safe, drug-free way, I might add. But that's why I've been a meditator for most of my life now, and all the other things, the Oneness University and all the other things that I do. So are they all blissful? Tell us about that, because people will be excited to have an NDE just because they think it's blissful, but be more specific, please.
Actually, they're not all blissful. They believe that between 1% and 15% of NDEs are called distressing NDEs. And they did 4 studies, actually, between 1992 and 2006. Out of 130 NDEers, they didn't find anybody that had a distressing NDE. But that doesn't mean they don't happen. And generally, they're not reported as often because the person could be interested in keeping it to themselves because they may be fearful of the family's response to it or their doctor's response to it. Or they may feel that it wasn't something that they would want to report because they are embarrassed about it. And why did everyone else have a blissful one and I didn't? But generally, blissful NDEs and ones that really change people's lives and have them move forward. I'm not saying that the distressing ones don't also change those people's lives, but the blissful ones are definitely in the higher number of ones that happen.
Thank you. And so obviously the emotional benefits of an NDE, such as the one I had, is that it convinced me because experiences are so profound. Imagine an experience you've had versus reading about something in a book, or an experience you've had versus seeing the same thing on a TV show or in a movie. It's completely different if you've experienced it, for sure. So what are the emotional benefits aside from just the joy?
Well, the ongoing benefits are usually the after effects, which the people that have had a near-death experience really lose their fear of death. They feel very service-oriented towards the world. They feel that they want to maybe change jobs so that they can make an impact on others and help the world. That can often lead to divorce because they literally change their lives so much in such a positive way that their family and their friends can't keep up with them. And the experiencers also have many other wonderful side effects, such as intuition. We talked about that previously. And we also have a concern for others, a very strong love of others and acceptance of others. And so those are some of the areas that I feel that I also felt after my near-death experience. You probably had those as well.
Yeah, certainly. And because I was so young, I was 25, and I was a young 25, it so shifted my understanding of life and death and everything else. It's like when I moved to California and experienced the first earthquake, that was a paradigm shift. Literally my idea of what it's like living on the planet Earth shifted because, thank God, I'd never been in a natural disaster before, where the best laid plans, go right out the window. So it was huge. What was the difference for you, and what's a common experience of a different attitude about death?
Well, for me, one of the things that I haven't talked about yet is that I found out through IANDS that I had actually had a previous experience in my life that I believe it could have been an experience. I found out that at 18 months old, I had a very high fever and went into convulsions and stopped breathing. And so my older brother reports to me, because my parents never told me anything about this, that I had turned completely purple. So I can kind of conclude that I might have had a near-death experience, because the after effects for me were that I didn't have any fear of death. And when people in my family died, I remember specifically my grandfather, I didn't have any impact with that. I thought, wow, he's going home. And I was very young when that happened, and it was very alarming to my parents. And I also had a really strong history of intuition that my parents weren't comfortable with, and I had to learn to suppress that to keep them happy. So it was a lot of change, and it came early on in my life, and so I didn't know how to live any other way. But IANDS' gift to me was finding out that those are after effects of a near-death experience and feeling comfortable with those.
And as far as you know, you're the only person in your family who's had one?
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked with my siblings now about it, and they didn't know that I'd had it when I was 31, and so when I asked my brother about, was there anything in my past that he could remember that might have been some sort of a strong experience for me, he came up with that, and I realized, wow, that answers a lot of questions for me in my earlier years of why I was so different from my other 4 siblings.
You know, that's really very huge. And this understanding of life and death, which I'm not aware of any religion in the United States that speaks about it, except if you happen to be a Hindu or a Buddhist, but you know, that's not a religion or a spiritual path that started here, you know. So it's just fascinating to me how some of us have had these experiences that are completely outside of our family's experience, and that we're the only person in our family, ostensibly, who understands it or is even interested in it, right. You know? And I'm sure that one day there will be an explanation for this. Is one day, if you know, humans survive long enough, there's going to be an explanation for almost everything. Okay. So electromagnetic effects, and by that you mean that where the watch stops or the TV or the computer do something weird?
Exactly.
Okay. See, I learned so much from Barbara because I never knew that this had some link to NDEs. So tell us about that, please.
Yeah, people who have had a near-death experience really report that the watch stops, the TV turns off automatically, you know, their computer malfunctions. For me, it's streetlights. My family's noticed for years that I'll drive by or walk by a streetlight and it turns off. And they always thought, how odd is that, you know, and they didn't know it wasn't just me. They thought maybe it was them. But the electromagnetic disturbances have really been researched, and they found that those people who had really gotten comfortable with their near-death experience reported less problems with the electromagnetic effects. And so they've done a lot of research on it, and they found this is really one of the common after effects of a near-death experience.
Wow.
So we don't wear watches.
That's so interesting. Yeah. The electricity went off in my home last week unexpectedly, and it turned out it was the whole neighborhood. But at the time, I didn't know it. Yeah. And I thought to myself, oh, yeah, because Barbara's going to be a guest on my show, and now I know this is one of the side effects.
I know, you have to be careful.
But I was so happy to find out it wasn't me, after all, yeah. So now, increased intuition, of course. Every time I have an inexplicable experience, something about the non-visual, something about the alpha-beta world we inhabit, of course, then that gives you more reassurance that your intuition may be great. But tell me, I believe you said that people who've had NDEs have enhanced intuition.
Yes, that's actually been researched very specifically as well. In my case, I had that very early on, and my parents were very alarmed by that. So, you know, telling my parents that there was going to be a car accident or who was on the telephone and was calling ended up causing great distress. So I think NDEers use that intuition, and they don't often, you know, voice it. They aren't walking around with a near-death experience NDE marked on their forehead, so they use that in their life to help themselves or others, but they, you know, are comfortable with it. They get comfortable with it. I actually ended up being able to tell a doctor here in Santa Barbara that I was going to have an 11-pound baby, and who in the heck would believe that? In fact, he didn't even believe it. But I did have the 11-pound baby, and you know, I have a 6'6" son now to prove it. So it's, you know, it comes through to kind of help you. There are different ways that it comes through to assist you in your life, and if you listen to it and you're able to be open to it. I've never had any training to increase it. I kind of think maybe I should do that or something, but the times it has helped have been very amazing.
So give us some examples of that, because we've got enough time to really hear about how having an NDE has really transformed the quality of your life. And a lot of the things that you and I have spoken about, what you've described, is also true for me. A sense of you must live your life with a mission. Otherwise, for me, I was just wasting my time, you know? And once I was living my life as a mission, you know, it's not my personal mission, it's the mission of service for which I appeared, right? That's something to do with either something I decided to do on the other side, something I was groomed for in past lives, if you believe in that. And I guess that's another question. It's not an official question, but maybe you have an answer. Do more NDEers than not believe in multiple lifetimes?
Absolutely. Actually, that is an answer that I can give you. They do believe in multiple lifetimes, and they also feel very strongly that their NDE has opened them up to the consciousness from the other side. So they let go and they get guidance, and they feel very connected with the other side. They really feel comfortable with their life and how they're going, because they realize either they planned it before birth or they feel that guidance is coming through. One of the other things that happens is that NDEers really focus on service and the helping the world, so their lives are transformed by that gearing up of helping others and maybe setting aside, you know, focusing on money or ego or anything else. They really change their lives so that they're beneficial to the world.
You know, focusing on money and power, in my opinion, would be great if I hadn't already seen how it suddenly disappears for no apparent reason. So having had the experience where it's like 1 minute you have it and the next minute it's gone, you know, or 1 minute you've got this relationship and the next minute it's gone, you know, and I thought, well, this idea that you can't take it with you, I think what they really mean is you can't make sure that it's going to stay. And therefore, what has kept me going has been this understanding that each human being is kind of dancing between the raindrops. You're following your either intuition or your higher self or your spirit guides or your destiny or God or whatever terminology you want to use. And as you do that, you're having all these extraordinary experiences called life, and you're meeting all these extraordinary people, and then presumably, in my experience, I know that this is not the only time I've been alive, but you know, that's a concept for another show. And what would you say is perhaps a unique experience you've heard, either you've had it or someone that you know has had it, that has made having an NDE really thrilling because it's changed someone's perspective in a really big way?
Well, one of the NDEers that came forward here in Santa Barbara was a man who stood up in front of our IANDS group, and after not telling his story, his NDE story, for 30 years because a doctor at Cottage Hospital told him that he was hallucinating when he told the doctor about it, he had drowned offshore off the Channel Islands. And in his drowning situation, when he was in his NDE, he ended up being asked, "What did you do with your life?" And of course, he first thought about, "Oh, I was a Boy Scout." And he wasn't very old when he had his NDE. But he then responded, "If I hadn't drowned, I would go back and I would invent something that would help people who are scuba diving to have emergency oxygen." Yeah. He immediately found himself back in his body, face down on the surface of the ocean, and his colleagues that were diving with him pulled him into the boat. They airlifted him to the hospital. The doctor told him he couldn't possibly have had that experience and he never spoke about it. The most amazing piece of that is that he went on to invent that absolute device that the Navy uses and divers all over the world use. And he told his story at IANDS Santa Barbara, and we all cried with him, because that's the hardest part of this, is the people who won't listen and won't believe this story. And we know it's true, and we're telling you the truth from our hearts. But there are a lot of people who just can't get it. And so we just keep on telling the story, though. That's what is most important, is finding those people we can give the gift to.
Yes, that's so true. The service that you provide is huge. And, you know, as Barbara said before, and you guys know me, so you know it's all about service. Now, what's been very interesting for me in these years, these decades of being in India, practicing meditation, doing what is called in Sanskrit seva, selfless service, I've always been in a huge hurry. And anyone who knows me knows that I am, to the limits of my physical stamina, I am doing something that I believe, to the best of my ability, you guys, is going to make a contribution and a difference in people's lives. And when I went to the Oneness University and I met Bhagavan, the founder, and when I met Guru Mai many, many times, you know, it was always about what could I do? I'm fascinated that everyone who has had some sort of spiritual or near-death experience, and I know tens of thousands of them, don't have this feeling of pressure that I have. You know, life is short, let's do something that's going to make a difference today. And you're, of course, doing a lot of things, and you're completely devoted to service as well. Do you have anything to say about this? It's funny to me.
It could be that link to the additional lives. You know, when you get that feeling that you're going to be coming back and you have multiple lives to do your work in, it could be that they are slowing down because they realize they've got more time, like eternity, to do their work. You are a Energizer bunny with what you do, and I am too.
Yeah,
I enjoy being that way.
Yeah.
Our whole lives are wrapped around the excitement that we get about helping people.
Yeah.
And there are, with near-death experiences, there are people like us, and then there are also those ones that kick back and they almost, you know, relax into the fact that they've got multiple lives and they don't accomplish much. So it can be going either way.
It's just so fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, it's human nature.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I find it incredibly fascinating. And I've been studying a series of CDs on the Bardos, on the Buddhist understanding of what happens before death, and that there are all sorts of preparations that we want to make if we want to merge into the light. And in fact, I'm looking for someone who might be an expert on this to be on the show. And as I listen to these CDs that a friend of mine gave me, they're like 9 CDs. And it's very complicated. You know, it's extremely complicated. If you see a land and you see, you know, cultivation and you see people and you see houses, go to that one, because that's a life where you're going to be able to be active and make a difference. And if you see such and such and such and such, whatever it is, don't choose to go there, because that, you know, that's like sitting on the beach for 50, 60 years. There's nothing wrong with it, but it isn't putting you in a, you know, whatever. So humans, we have free will. We get to make, it seems, we get to make all these choices, including having a near death and coming back, or having a near death and not coming back for many people. And if you ever find this out, I want you to call me and tell me, is there ever anyone who was told they needed to come back and absolutely refused and then was sent back anyway?
Very many people, actually. That's
really?
Actually very common, yes.
Do you know anything more? I didn't prepare you for this question.
I've heard many stories where that's happened, where they've just put their foot down. I talked with one young woman who said, I put my foot down and it was so beautiful over there and I felt so connected and I was in the light and it didn't hurt my eyes. And she said, I was told I needed to go back. And she said, no, I will not go back. Wow. She hadn't had that great of a life here, and she was feeling that she was home, and yet she was sent back anyway. And some people actually come back from their near-death experiences with a situation like that, and they're depressed afterwards because they feel they were kicked out of heaven, or they were, removed from the light. But that is only because they have more to learn. They have more experiences here. They haven't completed their purpose that they planned to do when they decided to come into this incarnation. So it is a very common thing to have happen for people to be upset about.
Interesting. And in fact, I'm working with somebody on Thursday on finding his true purpose. Here's a guy I've known for 30 years. He doesn't live in Santa Barbara. He's all about service. He is one of the sweetest, kindest people in the world. And I haven't seen him in 20 years, and he's had a really difficult time of late. And, all of the negative emotions that go along with it. And then he said to me, and his son is going through the same thing. His son is going through what this guy went through when he was in his 20s. Now, this guy is in his, I guess, early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, and he's back again in a, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but it's all about connecting to Source. It's all about connecting to the divine. There isn't a right and a wrong, so it'll be interesting. I'll tell you. I'll tell you what we discovered. I won't obviously talk about his personal experience, but I'll talk to you more about that. Now, tell us about the meetups, because I just was thrilled that so many people came. It was just fantastic.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, on Meetup, the site online, the IANDS Santa Barbara group is listed under Near Death Experiences in the Santa Barbara area, so you can find us online on meetup.com. And then also the IANDS website has referrals to us and all the other groups around the world, so it's IANDS.org, and you look under the groups, find a group section in California and Santa Barbara, and there we are, and it gives information about when we have our monthly meetings. And also people can contact me directly, either via email or by my telephone. I never mind someone giving me a call, and I generally like to meet up with people who are experiencers and have lunch with them and get to know them and hear their experience and share with them so that they feel comfortable about joining our group and attending. So if you're interested, please give me a call.
And these are, really sweet people. Really, really sweet people. And when I went to the movie, when I went to see Heaven is for Real, I know so many of them. I've seen them so many, and I'm sure you will too. If you're watching this TV show, if you've seen me on Gigi's show for 9 years, if you, go to any of the different Unity things or Center of the Heart, etc., you'll recognize a lot of these people, and it's really fun. It's so much fun to go to something like a spiritual movie as part of a group and hear everybody having this experience, because a lot of us come from families where we're the only ones, right? Mm-hmm. And so we don't have this common denominator of everybody going, yes, 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 affirmations, right?
That's right.
Okay, so some of the incredible guests, you mentioned Anita Moorjani, had come to one of the meetups, sadly before I knew about you, and she spoke about the transformation of fear and dread in her experience. Would you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, Anita's experience was quite amazing. She had been suffering for 4 years with advanced lymphoma, and she was in stage 4B. So she'd been in a wheelchair, and she had very limited ability to breathe, and her organs were shutting down, and she found herself hospitalized in 2006. She went into a near-death experience in the hospital, and she ended up talking with her father on the other side. Her father had died of cancer, and in the time that she spoke with him during her near-death experience, he said, Anita, what you've been doing is you've been having fear and wrapping your life around the fact that you were fearful of cancer. So when you ate something, you thought, oh, this won't cause cancer. That was negative. When you did something else, you thought, oh, this could cause cancer. That was negative. Every time you thought of cancer, you were drawing the cancer to you. So you have the opportunity, Anita, if you want to go back to your life, to actually stop and change your life and manifest health and happiness. She was very happily married, and she wanted to go back with Danny, her husband, and so she ended up going back into her life, she now has amazing insight into the other side and how we can live our lives without cancer and without problems, because we can manifest what we want and push away what we don't want. And I think she's just an amazing speaker. Her speech that she gave in Santa Barbara is on SoundCloud.com. People can hear that speech and pass that link on to others that need to hear it as well. So is Eben Alexander, and Raymond Moody, a speech of his is on there, and Pamela Osley, our Santa Barbara psychic and Life Colors person, and many other people. So people can access those free and anytime they'd like to.
And tell them what the exact link is, please.
It's www.soundcloud.com, and then you would, in the search... Okay, well, in the search bar, you can either search IANDS Santa Barbara, or you can go ahead with a /, and...
I'll tell you, I'll tell them what it is.
Yeah, good.
Because it's, I think, too long for our screen. So it's HTTP with an S, HTTPS, //soundcloud.com /IANDS Santa Barbara. And if you didn't hear it or it's just too annoying, please send me an email or a text and I will get it to you, okay? So, or do the same with Barbara, because you've got all of her contact information as well. And I want to listen to some of these recordings. This is so fantastic, because I didn't hear about you until recently, and the fact that you had Anita Moorjani here is really spectacular. So, for example, do you have some of your future speakers already booked? Do you know?
Well, Jeff Olson is the main one that's coming around the corner on September 3rd, and we'll also audio tape him. But we audio tape people that are coming at either locals or people coming from far away. Anita Moorjani traveled from Hong Kong to come and talk here.
Wow, yeah. That's just amazing. Just amazing. And is she writing another book, did she say?
No, she actually hasn't mentioned another book, but she does have a second one out after she wrote her first book, which was called Dying to Be Me. And so if you look online at Amazon.com with Anita Moorjani, and it's Moorjani, you'll find all of the information out about her.
Thank you. And what is so remarkable to me, having heard her speak in some other venue, maybe it was a TED Talk or something, it is the absence of fear. That's the common denominator that we're talking about. You know, somebody talking about going out of your body, and in my case, having 103 fever and being alone in a hotel room in, you know, New Delhi, India, and, you know, basically everybody that I knew well in New Delhi is out of town, you know, and then I get a doctor who says he's trained at the University of Michigan and telling me I definitely don't have any of the dread diseases I thought it might be, but I just have the flu, and then giving me medication that doesn't help at all, and my fever just gets worse, and boom, I pop out of my body. Who would think that that experience would eliminate and transform so much of the fear I had about being alive?
Exactly.
I mean, it seems completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? But the truth is, people who've had this experience have a lot less fear. Now, there are many ways to eliminate fear, and, you know, a lot of them have to do with spiritual experiences. You know, seeing the blue pearl during deep meditations with Siddha Yoga, being in the presence of enlightened masters and going into a state of pure bliss. These are all the things that, to me, were more real than real, right? Yeah. And so I know you've got a convention coming up. So someone who has or hasn't had these experiences can still attend the convention, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So talk about that.
In fact, when I first attended the IANDS convention, that was a pretty eye-opening experience for me, because it was the first time I'd met anyone else who'd had a near-death experience. So the community was just amazing, and I felt welcomed and happy to be there. That was where I ended up talking to one of the researchers, and when I spoke to her about how I didn't understand that the after effects that they were explaining had happened all the way back to my childhood, she was the one who gave me the information that I should investigate with my family members whether I'd had any type of prior experience, which led me to find out about what I think was my first near-death experience at age 18 months. The conference is happening August 28th through the 31st, and that's Labor Day weekend. It'll be down in Newport Beach, California at the Marriott, and we have speakers that are from all over the world again, and they're going to be amazing. The keynotes are going to be Jeff Olson, that I mentioned earlier, Eben Alexander. I believe that they're trying to get Peter Russell in. He's a very renowned speaker on consciousness. And also a number of others that are coming in. PMH Atwater, which is a researcher. She's a researcher who's written 13 books on near-death experiences, including the big book of near-death experiences and Idiot's Guide to Near-Death Experiences. So she's an amazing human being. And so there are going to be wonderful workshops, and I just wouldn't miss it if I were you. If you are interested in going, it's such a welcoming crowd, and you can go online at IANDS.org. In the month of May, they will be opening up the registration, or you can call me, and I'll be happy to give you more information about it.
Thank you. And you keep talking about medical research. And of course, I read Eben Alexander's book. I went and saw him speak, and he's an MD, and he's someone who had really an extraordinary time in his NDE. And medical research said that he couldn't possibly have been experiencing anything, because it said that, you know, what they know about NDEs so far is that it occurs in a part of the brain. So many doctors didn't believe it happened at all, but that part of his brain was non-functioning.
Neocortex.
Thank you, the neocortex. And so if you can tell us a little bit more about how the whole medical research is based on Eben's experiences has to be shifting.
Yes, it is. And his information that he brought back was so astounding that the medical researchers don't know what to do with it, because he had a very, very extensive near-death experience where he did, go into a spiritual realm where he was given advanced knowledge for the world. He's bringing that information back. He's actually writing most of that up in a second book that he's following up his first book with, which was that Proof of Heaven book that's #2 on the New York Times bestsellers list. He's got a new book that's coming out that's going to go more deeply into what he was given, the information he was given on the other side. And it's going to rock people's socks off, because the information is so deep, and I think pieces of it have been brought to us in other ways through other religions and etc. But I think Eben is putting it all together in a very cohesive form that people can say, this guy's been on the other side, he was given this information and told to bring it back to us. We should probably listen. Yeah.
And what I found so useful about that book is I have a former stepfather who's 95 years old, and he is now in great shape and great health. He had a heart valve replacement. He's doing amazingly. And they told him he doesn't even have to go back to the doctor for another 7 years.
Wow.
Which is, Sydney is an extraordinary guy, to say the very least. So I decided to give him Eben Alexander's book, because Sydney's brother was an MD, and my father was an MD, and so, he's part of that whole world. And he is reading the book, read the book, and then I went on a visit to Florida. And because I had given him the book, it opened up an entirely new kind of conversation about what's possible as a human being, what we used to think was impossible, which we now realize there's a lot less that's impossible than we once thought, And so it was a great gift in shifting my relationship with him. It also, as many of you who watch my show know, that I just adore Howard Wills, and I work with him whenever I have any health issue, and the health issue disappears. So by having Sid read this book about near-death experiences by an MD, Sid was willing to watch my shows with Howard Wills, and I was there for 5 days, and he wasn't even using a walker on the 5th day. Wow. So Sid's health shifted so much by reading the book, understanding what's possible, watching the Howard Wills videos a couple of times, that his wife, who's about my age, said to him, you know, I don't think you need to use your walker today, and he didn't. And when they drove me to the airport, I was really stunned. She said, no, no, don't even bring it. Oh, no, you're doing great, don't even bother to bring it. So for a 95-year-old guy to have that kind of a completely different shift, why? Because when you focus on what you want, this is the Anita Moorjani message, right?
Yes.
When you focus on what you want, when you're asking the divine either with consciousness or not, you're being supported. When you ask for what you don't want, you know what's going to happen. And I saw this with my own eyes. A 95-year-old guy, well, he didn't throw the walker away, but he might as well have. Because, I mean, he walked out of their apartment, into the elevator, down, walks out around to the parking lot with nothing. Nobody's holding on to him, nothing. And it was simply by letting him know that here's a medical doctor, Eben Alexander, who's had this experience. There's more than just your body. There are more opportunities, right?
Yes. We need to remember that there's a lot that we don't understand. And as we grow with these understandings, we can grow with the experiences that they bring forth. And believing is just the most important thing, is just understanding that this information is not being brought to you because we have any gain in it. It is because we gain by helping you understand this information. It is really important for people to grasp that the world is changing in a lot of ways. Quantum physics is changing our outlook. Yes. Quantum mechanics, they now think that there are actually ways that they're going to prove that there are multiple worlds. Yes. And so, yes, you know, this is stuff that was never, our mouths would have dropped open and our gum would have fell out in junior high school if they told us this. But nowadays, they are coming forward with black holes and everything else that we are now finding is real. The NDEs are real. They've been real ever since they first started. Yeah. And this is a life-changing event. You don't have to have one to have that life change either. You can just understand that it's real.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So
I'm so thrilled to have you. And, you know, feel free to ask Barbara any question. She is such an angel, as you see. She will take every question seriously. She'll give you the best possible answer, or she'll point you in the right direction. So thank you so much. I will be going to as many meetups with IANDS as I possibly can, because it's just wonderful. Thank you, all of you, each and every one of you, for watching our show today. Please continue to read my column in Santa Barbara Family Life, and please continue to send me your questions. It's much more fun for me if I actually know that it's someone in Santa Barbara asking questions and not just a client from some other part of the world, because this is our local paper. And we look forward to seeing you next month. I'm going to have a fabulous guest who's doing alternative health in a very different way, a very unique way. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.